I met my husband Ryan in high school when we were just 15 years old. We were together ever since. We were married 13 years, together for 25 years, when we made the worst mistake of our lives. On November 10th, 2021, Ryan began to have flu-like symptoms, fatigue, fever, chills. By November 21st, he began to feel some chest tightness. Despite his pulse oxygen meter showing his oxygen in the 90s when at rest, Ryan thought it would be a good idea to go to the ER to knock out this bug before it may get worse. He thought they would give him what they did for me when I have an asthma attack, give steroids, maybe an antibiotic, and send him home. As a health and life insurance agent, Ryan seen the payouts for the new drug Remdesivir, and it didn't sit right with him. We were hearing bad things about the drug history, so we knew never to agree to Remdesivir or a ventilator. Ryan promised me he knew these things, and as we sat in the car of the ER parking lot, he said, "I'm an American. I can say no to whatever I don't want. They can't give me anything I don't consent to. I'll be fine." He kissed his fingers and put them to my forehead, and then gave me a wink. So while all that should have been the case, we couldn't have been more wrong. Deadly wrong. Ryan, after hours of being in there, kept complaining of feeling delusional, losing track of time, not able to focus. His aunt, who started as a nurse in a veterans hospital, told him ER psychosis was normal. Apparently, she had no idea that they had him on anti-anxiety drugs my husband has never been on before, drugs that would hinder his ability to make critical choices on his own, and unknowingly, drugs that will hinder his ability to breathe. By mid-2020, many families learned that hospitals were increasing patient deaths with the use of midazolam, which increased in its use 100% during this time. Many hospital records showed patients were overdosed on quantities of midazolam and other strong sedatives, resulting in patient deaths. Many times records show these drugs were given against informed consent. I began to ask Ryan if they had an IV started yet, and he told me no. Then later he told me they did start an IV, that he must have been asleep when they did that. I thought to myself, who sleeps through an IV being done? I thought maybe he was being funny, knowing how much I hate having that done, knowing I don't like needles. It was not until much later we would learn how many sedatives he was being given and why they must have did it. As I would later come to know, this is when Remdesivir was being given against our consent. After a few days, my updates from the doctors began to include them telling me that one of his kidneys is starting to show signs of distress. When I asked if this was due to them giving him Remdesivir against our consent, they would say, "Well, we don't have his chart in front of us. We will have to get back to you on that." This went on for the rest of the week. However, when the weekend came around, I called and got a new nurse on the phone that I have never talked to before, so I decided to play this off differently. I pretended to not know much on Remdesivir and in fact was interested in him getting it if he had not already. It was then the nurse replied, "Oh, let me look at his chart and check." Why, yes, he was given that as soon as he came in. My heart sank. Ryan was now one of the vast majority to have been poisoned by Remdesivir. Ryan's kidneys were quickly declining, and in under 2 weeks, he would have only 6% kidney function. The FDA had shown that Remdesivir caused kidney failure. Independent trials proved Remdesivir caused patients harm. In November of 2020, the World Health Organization advised hospitals not to give Remdesivir to COVID patients. It was already known that Remdesivir was not effective on COVID patients if the patient is well past the incubation phase. The viral replication is complete. It's by this time there is a decrease in oxygenation due to inflammation in the lungs. The earliest trials of Remdesivir, when used to treat Ebola, killed 93 patients out of 175 in trial. Yet despite the findings, this drug was still considered an early treatment drug for COVID. Whatever could motivate our hospitals to push such a product, oftentimes given against consent or proper timing of use.
It's a failure. The hospital was supposed to save lives. There shouldn't have been a single death in the hospital. That should have been the demand from Americans. The observation that there were almost no deaths of people at home with COVID is startling. You'd think that if this indeed was truly the illness with a natural history and a fatal outcome, there would be people dead at home. You would just think that's the case. One cannot find manuscripts or reports of that. In the United States, it's virtually all the deaths occurred in the hospital. So the question on the table is, what occurred in the hospital that failed to save lives?
Gilead, the makers of Remdesivir, earned $4.2 billion in the first 9 months. Hospitals were given money to test, diagnose, and admit COVID patients and report their deaths. Doctors were threatened their jobs and sometimes career entirely if they used any effective off-label treatment, despite the NIH guidelines saying they could. And now today it seems more and more truths are coming out about what was done to our loved ones the last 4 years.
Efforts and controversies cannot be overstated. In November of 2020, the World Health Organization, which did the largest study and synthesized all the other studies on Remdesivir, the World Health Organization proclaimed Remdesivir should not be used in the hospital because it causes death and causes kidney injury and liver injury. The World Health Organization. And astonishingly, the U.S. puts an incentive on the use of Remdesivir. They put a 20% bonus on the entire hospital bill if a U.S. hospital uses Remdesivir. Now, I'm a doctor. I order medications in the hospital. If I order a series of injections of a particular medicine, the hospital doesn't get a bonus on the entire hospital stay. If a hospital stay costs, let's say, $500,000, that's an extra $100,000. We're talking big money for the use of a 5-day course of Remdesivir that the WHO says not to use. One cannot understate how disordered the thinking is.
So many of us seen firsthand things that others cannot begin to imagine our loved ones being forced to go through. Most can't fathom such a level of evil and greed taking over the hearts of our fellow American healthcare staff, and such evil being overlooked on American soil. Follow my page as I begin to take you on my journey from the last 3 years, and by the end, you can decide, was this hospital guilty of negligence or solicitation to commit murder?